Hey, what is going on, you guys? How to Tech here, back with another video. Now, before we get started, the game you're seeing in the background is called The Mean Greens. I will link it to the Steam page down below. It's an awesome game, really fun game. I just started playing it the other day, and I really suggest it to you guys. It's unique, I love the style, and the thought process behind it. Now, let's get into the video. Alright, so to start this build off, I went with the Xeon case that I found on Amazon for $23. Now, unlike our last build, this one has blue LED fans. Now, it's nothing special as a case, but it has USB 3 headers on the front for us, and it'll hold everything we got. And there are other cases in this price range, but I went with this one because it is a $200 build and we really need to save every dollar that we can. And now for the power supply, I found this APVIA 450 watt power supply on Amazon. Again, this one's only $21, but for this build, we don't have a graphics card, so this will power it just fine. But note that if you do plan on upgrading this build, I would not get this power supply. I would spend the extra $10 and get an EVGA 400 watt or something along those lines that you know will last and be able to power a full system. But for this build, it's just going to be powering an APU, so it will do just fine. I've had power supplies like this before. I never used really crazy power supplies in my APU builds. So yeah, let's get into the next part. And that would be this MSI A68H motherboard that I found on Amazon. Now, this motherboard looks great. I've owned A68H motherboards in the past because I've done 3 APU builds. It will perform just fine. I've never had a problem with them. The only downfall that I can think of is that they have 2 RAM slots instead of 4. But like I said, this is a $200 build, so we're not going to be making use of those 4 RAM slots anyway. So I would definitely go with this motherboard. Now, one thing I would like to note is it supports RAM up to 2100 MHz, which is very important, and I will talk more about that later on in the build. So for the RAM, I went with this HyperX Fury 4GB 1866 MHz stick that I found on Amazon. Now, it's DDR3 RAM. I've owned several HyperX Furies in the past. I've only owned the 1600 MHz series, but it's the same thing. They cost maybe $1 more, and it is very important that we get the fastest RAM we can for this build. So I really recommend, if you do go along this route of a $200 PC, that you overclock the RAM. I cannot stress that enough. The higher the RAM speed, the faster your system will perform graphically, because the APU, again the embedded graphics chip in there, runs off of your RAM speed. So the faster RAM means more frames per second. I have tested this on myself. I had a A4 7300 build, and when I would overclock my 1600 MHz RAM to 1866, it gave me a 10 FPS boost in Skyrim. So I cannot stress that enough. Make sure you overclock the RAM. That is why we're using an APU in this build. It will perform excellent. And now what you've been waiting for. Now for the APU that I've been talking about so dearly, I went with the A4 7400K for $56, again on Amazon. Now there are so many APUs, there's $40 ones to $100 ones. Now just get what suits you. I mean, if you have a couple extra dollars, make sure you upgrade that APU, or maybe you don't have $200, you could get a cheaper one for $40, $50. Like I said, I've owned 3 APUs in the past. They perform very good if you use the right parts with them. You can expect medium-high settings depending on how old the game is, and 720p, 30 to 60 frames per second. It really depends greatly on the game, because the CPU speed is going to be the holdback of this system. But you can play Fallout 4, Skyrim, any new game really at 30 FPS to be expected, and you really can't ask for anything else for a $200 build. Now, surprisingly, I was able to fit a 500GB hard drive into this system. Originally, I was going to throw in a 320, but I was able to find this Seagate pipeline on Amazon. It took me a while, but it's an Amazon Choice highly rated hard drive. It's $28, 500GB SATA 3, so it'll perform fine enough for this build. Don't expect an SSD or anything crazy. You'll be loading games at hard drive speeds. I don't know what else to tell you, but it's a solid hard drive. It'll last, it'll store a lot of games. And that wraps up this build, guys. Our total cost came out to $201 as of February 17th. Now, all of these prices, they will fluctuate between $1 to $10, so make sure you adapt and check the market. Like I said, there's several cases, many power supplies, different sticks of RAM in case the price does go up. You can adapt. Just make sure you stick to the 1866 MHz RAM and don't get a really shitty power supply. Make sure you get something that's solid and will be able to power the system. Now, thank you for watching. Smash that like button, subscribe for more. Peace.